In 1947, it was not a birth of a new nation alone, but a new identity that made strides throughout Pakistan's political arena and social landscape as well. However, the identity being fixated with the political entity allowed it to be resolved with it. Mohajirs ruled Pakistan and then lost Pakistan, but again regained power through a political entity known as MQM. Surprisingly, being less in number as compared to other people, our national language was Urdu and not Bengali. Our first Prime Minister was Liaquat Ali Khan and a Urdu speaking. Then why did Mohajirs claim to be marginalized, and how come a political entity as big as MQM came out of it? The word Mohajir means immigrant in the literal sense. Mostly people who migrated from India to Pakistan were because of the riots, and there were many well settled and educated Muslims from the herd as well. A reason to believe this theory is to even travel in that time, you did require knowledge regarding routes, and the dominant media being printed, you had to be literate as well. It's safe to say that people who migrated were educated, but the ratio of illiterate people is still debatable. People who identify themselves as Mohajirs are mostly found in the area of Sindh, specifically in the old capital Karachi, Hyderabad, and Sakkar. The majority of the people are found in Karachi. Why so? Most of the economic opportunities were easy to find in Karachi, as it was the capital city and a metropolitan one as well. Moreover, the educated immigrants required a breeding ground for their skill set, which Karachi accommodated them with. The Punjab side was a mere reflection of the Indian Punjab, as ethically both sides were similar but religiously different. The 1951 census showed that there were about 7.22 million immigrants in Pakistan out of a population of 30 million people in Pakistan, which excluded many of the individuals who didn't identify themselves as Mohajirs as they settled from east to west Punjab in the partition, which only changed their location, but their culture was the same. Immigrants who claimed to be Muhajirs were the ones who spoke Urdu. Soon after, the educated class of Hindus' departure from these areas built up a vacuum of professionals that was filled up with the immigrants. I would like to state some facts to create a better image to understand the position Mohajirs held after the partition. The indigenous had a literacy rate of 10% as compared to the immigrants that had a literacy rate of 70%. An account from political office showed Mohajirs and Punjabi speaking refugees had occupied 18 out of 27 offices of Governor General, President, Prime Minister, provincial governors, and chief ministers. In 1978, being less than 8% of the population, Mohajirs held 33.5% gazetted positions. In 1968, the military was dominated by Mohajirs as they held 11 out of 48 of senior positions. However, Sindhi, being double in population, comprised of 2.7% of gazetted employees, 4.3% of the secretariat, and 3.6 of the executive in public enterprise. In 1968, there was no account of Sindhis found in the military. Mohajirs had dominated every arena in Pakistan and were overrepresented on merit. The people of Sindh were farmers and were never involved in these urban activities. Then why did Mohajirs bother to fight and formulate a party? Everything was leaning in their favor. The Mohajirs felt discriminated when Fatma Jinnah stood for elections and was shunned by Ayub Khan. Soon Ayub Khan decided to change the location of the capital from Karachi to Islamabad, more close to the GHQ. This sowed a seed of resentment in Mohajirs. The final blow was by Bhutto. When he came in power, he brought in the quota system in the government and nationalized the industries of Pakistan. Nationalization of industries meant that private ownership was revoked. From the 12 richest business groups of Pakistan, 7 were of immigrants, and the 7 of the industries alone were in Sindh. Till this day, it's a rare sight to find anyone beside Urdu speaking or Maiman in the business community. Quota system meant that rural people could secure a certain amount of seats on the basis of their domicile. In Sindh, he made Sindhi the provincial language and brought it in board papers as well. The victims of his measures were Mohajir people and the beneficiaries were rural Sindhi people. There onwards, Mohajir only knew one thing, that was that Bhutto is unfit to rule over Pakistan. Zia was the next in line and used all of his guns to bring down Bhutto. In the next elections, Bhutto was accused of rigging elections and eventually tensions grew where the next martial law was imposed. After the martial law, friction between Sindhi and forces grew, followed up by the death or penalty of Bhutto. To consolidate his own rule, Zia favored the Urdu-speaking community to break PPP's dominance in Sindh. From a student organization named APMSO grew out an entire party called MQM under Zia's rule. There were multiple factors that gave the party and the idea its rapid fame, but if anyone could point to one incident where MQM exponentially grew would be after the Kasba Aligarh incident. A schoolgirl named Bushra became a victim of a bus race, and there onwards the riots spread like a wildfire. The mini bus driver was a Pashtun, and the girl who lost her life was a Mohajir. In reaction to the accident, authorities cracked down on the Pashtuns' drug cartel, and it was suspected that the informants would be the common enemy, Mohajirs. This led to the killing spree of Kasba Aligarh, where 400 people were shot dead in less than 2 hours. The unimaginable brutality blurred out the Mohajirs and made this a humanitarian issue. People wanted a platform to grieve upon the gone and save the future from these atrocities. MQM ticked all the boxes and won the local body elections from Karachi and Hyderabad. Those lives lost became the pillar of MQM to legitimize violence in its active years. Zaya's plane crash was a tragedy mourned by the entire nation, but it was detrimental for MQM as well. MQM was under the shadow of Zaya, but now it was a test in the open field for once. The next election campaign were designed to cash ethnicity and sympathy of lives lost. PPP had Sindhis to mourn over Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Zaya's suppressive era. MQM had Mohajirs to sympathize for 1947 and Kasba Aligarh. The results reflected the campaign as Mohajirs won the Urban Sindh and PPP won the Rural Sindh. PPP to formulate its government required the piece that fell in the lap of MQM. They joined hands against Punjab to form the government. The relationship was short-lived due to ethnic differences. MQM broke the alliance to go solo. MQM tried to renew the party's identity by renaming the party from Mohajir Qawmi Movement to Muhatteda Qawmi Movement. This automatically increased the party audience. MQM's rapid growth in the political arena wasn't a fluke, but required rigorous planning, unlawful acts, and unconditional support from multiple allies. The allies were a very controversial topic as it started out as a pet project by few students and grew into a full-fledged party overnight, especially in an era of dictatorship. If not supported, then other parties were evidently suppressed, which allowed MQM to grow on steroids in the era of Zia. In the future, many controversial figures were found with MQM, such as India. Unlawful acts were target killings and illegal extortion that heavily started out in the urban centers of Sindh. People who were true to the cause were seen to be deviating from MQM, and the consequences for disloyalty catched fame soon as well. The people trapped had exhausted all their options. The inhumane acts ruined MQM's image. Soon, the boiling pot had to react, and the reaction came as the Operation Cleanup in 1992. Altaf Hussain had sensed that this would lead to an end, and there onwards he fled from Pakistan till this day. However, MQM was able to stand up again in 1997 when it emerged as the second largest party in Sindh. The power in hand was of no use as the policies developed were directly against their motives. The final nail in the coffin for MQM's image was when Hakim Saeed was murdered. MQM was breathing in its last breath when Musharraf imposed martial law and came into power. It allowed MQM to buy more time to survive in the urban centers. Mustafa Kamal's service to Karachi made MQM the necessary evil of Sindh's urban areas and brought MQM 10 years. The 2007 elections and 2014 elections were on the same lines. There were minute details to ponder upon that made the difference, but the main takeout was that MQM's fame was declining. The Mohajir identity did not hold relevance as it did previously. The new generation associated themselves with the cities rather than where they belonged from. Authorities had to clear up Sindh's urban area to create a more attractive investment to our neighbor, China. Sindh's urban area was capitalized upon its safety by MQM for years. It was time to clear out MQM from these areas. A few of ex-members were brought in on air to confess regarding MQM's brutalities to create a negative image. Furthermore, some of the members were thrown into jail and some took it as a sign to fled the country. The 2018 elections was the final stroke that brought down MQM, from which Mustafa Kamal stood up from a party called Dolphin, which distributed the votes heavily and made PTI the dominant party to win and PPP from Sindh. The army who started this party had to pull the plug this way. It's your own demons that eventually consume you. Please don't forget to like our video and subscribe our channel for more content.